Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heathen Talk, episode 16. Tonight was going to be on language. We had a guest lined up, but things happen when you're doing stuff live, and our guest couldn't make it tonight. So, tonight we are going to talk about being heathen. I'll be honest, this is an emergency subject, and I'm fighting a cold, so it's going to be a little interesting. Hope you all enjoy it. If you're tuning in, please head over to the Facebook page, give us a like, follow us, be sure to share our statuses. It helps us reach out to everybody else and get more listeners.
And seriously, with a last-minute topic like this, we're going to do our best, but the more questions that you guys submit via the IRC, via Facebook, via Reddit, the better this show is going to go, and the more the content might actually have anything to do with something y'all want to hear.
And yeah, please.
Next week we will be giving a shout out to our Patreon patrons, and they will get their names read live on air. So if you are a Patreon patron, look for an update in your inbox towards the end of this week, and I will reach out to you and see if you want us to use your real name or a handle or however you want us to do it. Torin, what are you drinking tonight?
Tonight I am drinking the most Cascadian of Cascadian beers. I say that because it was brewed by Cascadians from ingredients bought in a Cascadian shop. In fact, it was brewed right here in this very apartment by myself and my brother Joe. This is a Cascadian Dark Ale. I guess you could almost say an Imperial Cascadian Dark Ale, 135 IBUs, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. You can't tell. It's one of the best things I've ever had in my life. So,
it's got a really amber color for a CDA.
Well, it wasn't originally intended to be a CDA. It was intended to be an Imperial IPA.
Well, there you go. Lauren, what are you drinking?
I have some Strongbow Gold Apple. I have no idea if that's the camera or not because I can't see. But.
How is Strongbow? I mean,
this is actually the first time I've had it, so I'm drinking it. It was supposed to be. They've got two different ones now, so it's all right. Still not living up to that woodchuck I had last week, but it's pretty good. I'm pretty picky about my ciders.
Well, when you come out to Cascadia for Cascadia Moot, Torin, I think you owe the people some pictures. We will make sure to get you some real cider.
Absolutely. We should make sure to get her some Lake Chelan.
I'm gonna go up.
Atlas.
Well, I'm gonna go up to the Fufu liquor store here in town, see if I can't find some other stuff.
As for me, I'm drinking a good Anglo-Saxon beer, Sam Smith's Organic Chocolate Stout. Because if you can't get Cascadian, might as well get English.
Well, that's third tier. I'd be thinking German would be second.
When was the last time you were in Germany?
In Germany? Never. Drink a lot of German beer, though.
Well, trust me, Germans are weird. They like Becks.
It's an import for them.
Go figure. So, tonight, we are drinking to a member of the Troth. He wrote one of my favorite compilations of short stories. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him yet, but tonight we are toasting Steve Abel. I believe he did sometime as the steersman for the Troth, right, Lauren?
He is in current steersman
of
the Troth.
Wow.
Has been on the read for quite a while. Really great guy. I've never met him personally, but members of my tribe speak highly of him, and I trust their judgment.
So, to Steve.
Yeah.
Steve.
That is the best chocolate stout on the planet.
It's certainly amongst the best. I'll give it that much.
So, one last small order of business. We had a contest last week during your women's episode.
We did, and we gave away, courtesy of Josh, we gave away a wonderful book. If you have it there to show.
This one right here, this book.
Which is called The Peace Fears and Shield Maidens. And I want to congratulate Ashley Morgan for winning the book. Ashley, if you are listening, we'll post it on Facebook after the show's over. If you're listening, send us a message and we will get that sent out to you.
Yes, we will.
And by we mean Josh.
Don't we always?
Hey,
Yeah.
one time it was by we meant me when we were sending out the last contest we did. But keep looking at Facebook, Twitter, and we'll keep you updated on that.
Yeah, well, congratulations, Ashley.
So, we've already confessed to our listener base that tonight's episode is an emergency topic that we were not prepared for.
This is basically going to be 90 minutes of us rambling about the practicalities of being heathen. So if you have questions, please ask them, because we would love to answer them, because we're flying by the seat of our pants tonight.
We're so by the seat of our pants that I honestly did not know what was intended by the concept of a show idea being heathen until she just explained it, because I've been at work all day and haven't really been able to follow the conversation on what the hell we were going to do after our guest canceled.
Yeah. It's okay, I had to explain it. It's not even, I don't know whose idea it was, but it was our producer's idea. But the idea is we're going to talk about, like, the practical end of being heathen. Talking about how to be a good guest, how to survive your first, like, heathen festival, how to meet people, how to find groups, just lots of kind of daily heathen stuff that is kind of important, but not necessarily involved enough that it deserves its own show.
Absolutely. So, when it comes to being heathen and pushing that narrative forward, when we talk about meeting groups, excuse me, what is the best way to introduce yourself to a new group of heathens? Obviously, the subreddit has a reputation for being cantankerous. So do most Facebook groups, and so did Also True Lore. So how do you handle that in real life?
Well, sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
I found that, to be fair, as cantankerous as we can be online, it doesn't necessarily translate into real life. Now, granted, I'm speaking only from my experiences, and I would say 90% of the heathens that I have met are Southern or Midwestern, and I do realize that by saying that, we're also really good at smiling at your face and shit-talking your back as a culture down here. So, bless your heart. Bless your heart is a way of life.
Well, I'd agree with you to a certain extent. I mean, how many people actually really put their, I guess, guest or host face forward when they're on the internet? I'd be willing to wager not many, because it simply is not a hospitality situation. As much as people try to push the idea of community online, it doesn't really exist. As we've tried to say on, the Asajj forum on Reddit, at best we're a marketplace of ideas. Hospitality does not really apply. Even though we'll occasionally bring up, what's the word I'm looking for? We'll make it analogous here and there, but it's still not a hospitality situation. So in reality, I mean, I would say I've seen the same thing here, Lauren, that some people that I absolutely know that if I had met them first online or if I ran into them online, we would just be out of the gate at each other's throats. I have met in real-life situations instead, and it was relatively pleasant until we got to know each other.
I think that's kind of important. But at the same time, I will freely admit I am going to judge people on how they behave, whether it's online even, just because while I recognize that the heathens online are going to be assholes. I mean, that's just... It's been that way for the last 15 years, as far as I know, probably since we got internet in heathenry. And they were probably assholes on like, I don't know, letters or something before that. But the point still being that I feel like I've really kind of, I guess the way even I believe online has evolved. I try not to be as much of a jerk online unless someone, I'll be honest, unless you're a racist, then I'm going to just make fun of you. But just because I also know that people are judging me, they're judging the show, and, it's our online life and our meat space life are really becoming very blurred in our interactions just in general. So I do try not to be a total douche online. Try.
I don't really have much to add to that. It's one of those things where meeting people in real life is very much a practice in being civil and knowing when and how to disagree with someone if you must. Whereas meeting people online doesn't carry those obligations.
Right. And I'd go ahead and say this. I mean, I think we wandered away from a little bit from what the question was itself. Is more how do you conduct yourself when you meet people in real life versus the way we do things online. And I'd be willing to say quietly, if that makes sense. I mean, if I'm approaching a coherent group of heathens, people that know each other, when I don't know them, I'm going to speak, but I'm not going to say much for a little bit, if that makes sense.
Let's toss out a little hogmail here. I mean, that's pretty much directly from what is said in there. I mean, you need to get a feel of what's going on before you jump right in. And I'm really bad about not doing that, so that's something I really actually have to work on because it doesn't come, first nature to me.
Well, I think that was Abe Lincoln who said, a fool because he opens his mouth. Whether or not it was Abe Lincoln, I'm saying it was Abe Lincoln. So we have actually 2 questions from the IRC here that I think are pretty good questions. This one's from Fussy. If you have a Christian family, how do you breach the subject of paganism? And to piggyback off of that, Jared C. asked, how did you guys tell your family, and how successful was it?
Well, I mean, that's just there is no one answer to that question. It really depends on your family. I mean, you can have very Christian families who are reasonable individuals that are going to easily accept it. You can have very Christian families that are going to lose their damn minds and tell you about how you're going to hell. You can have families that may not be comfortable with it, but still, even if they don't know the words, will generally keep frith within the family. And conversely, you can have those that will just as quickly disown you when they find out. So you have to know your family to be able to answer that question.
I think
true.
I've shared this before. It's not something I'm necessarily have told my family or told specifically my parents. There's an awareness, but it's not something we discuss, and that's just because to keep the frith in my family, to keep the peace, quite frankly, it's not worth the disruption to my family. That if I'm said, hey, yeah, I'm heathen, look at, it's just not worth it for me. I don't hide it, but I don't talk about it with them because it's just one of those topics. Pretty much I don't talk politics or religion with my family because it's just not worth the anger and the bad blood that it breeds. I mean, I told, my brother's an atheist and he knows, and my cousin has actually watched the show and she's a Christian and her reaction's been pretty good, but for the most part, because of my parents' very strong Southern Baptist beliefs, I don't. I just don't. We just don't talk about it, and I have no problems with that. Well, because that's the best thing to do.
I told my mom, who's a fairly devout and staunch Christian, and her reaction was to pretty much just kind of roll her eyes and figure it was a phase. My stepdad's reaction was to, well, I don't know what he did because it was over the phone and you can't read him. So, I mean, the reaction wasn't anything special, and I just told him. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm heathen now, you know.
Well, I mean, in my family, you know, you've got my mom who she considers herself a Christian. I call her an Easter and Sunday Christian. Or I'm sorry, Easter and Christmas Christian. But
Oh, she's not a mech?
a
Down
Mac.
here it's a Mother's Day, Easter, and Christmas.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what she does on Mother's Day, but it usually has nothing to do with church. But you know, and she kind of, I think her brain just shuts it out entirely. She understands that I'm not a Christian, and she will occasionally ask me, "quote unquote," what religion are you into these days? And my response is same religion I've been into for the last 17 years. My dad, on the other hand, you know, I've had discussions with him about it. He's much more Christian than my mom is, and yet he's very interested in it and is able to, you know, come up with it. And he just views it as a different way to God in his mind, as some Christians will. And then, of course, there's my...
Americans view it that way as well.
Right. And then, of course, there's my grandfather, who I never told. And I just handled it every time he asked me if I had found a good church to go to yet where I was living. I would say, well, I just really haven't found one I liked yet.
Sometimes that's what you got to do.
And it was the absolute truth. I just never told him I wasn't going to find one I liked.
I'm just to the point now where, you know, where I live, too, is a little different. I live somewhere, this is, I think, something that has been discussed online recently is, you know, I live somewhere where being non-Christian can genuinely be a huge issue. As far as employment and housing, and even though legally you can't do it, the fact of the matter is, I'm living in an area where people still, you know, I'm living in one of those areas that's just outgrown the satanic panic not that long ago. So people do, you know, most of the older pagans I know are not out one little bit because people did lose their kids, people lost their jobs, whatever. So I think it's also very different depending on the part of the country you're in. Versus, you know, Arkansas versus Cascadia.
Right. Well, mind you, my folks, none of them live here.
Yeah.
You know, my father's in West by God, Virginia, just to put some context on that.
We do have another question here. Same original asker. It's not even a question. She just wants us to broach the subject of the use of drugs as a way to connect to heathenry. This is a conversation that Torrin and I have had, especially with Kevin and Toby, on multiple occasions. And my take on it has always been there may be a place for drug use as a ritualistic thing. But if you use it for ritual, the only time you get to use it is for ritual. It can't be something, excuse me, it can't be something you do recreationally and ritualistically. To do so would essentially cheapen your altered state of mind.
Okay, I'll buy that with you. However, there are lots of things that one could use to enter an altered state of mind that we do use mundanely and also in the more spiritual realm. Food, alcohol. So there is that point of view as well.
While that point of view is there, the key difference that I see is when one consumes marijuana, DMT, whatever you're wanting to take, the sole purpose there is to alter the way your brain chemistry works. Whereas if I drink from a horn and stumble, I'm not getting drunk. I'm sharing a horn in a ritual. The two have different outcomes and uses.
Fair enough. Like I said, I was mostly just playing devil's advocate. Because I personally have, for me and mine, it's not something that I recommend or endorse. I am not against people doing whatever they want to do, but I guess because specifically I have, where I live and specific experiences me and mine have had, I'm very hesitant about it just because. Also, 90% of the people I've met who want to use drugs for spiritual reason are just trying to come up with, an excuse to smoke pot. Just to be honest.
Permission seekers.
Yeah.
Which we all know Aleglad just loves them.
I mean, that's just kind of like the joke I posted way back, like, can I claim a religious exemption and bring vodka to class?
So, on that subject, as far as using it, as part of greater tribal ritual, I'd be inclined to say not at all, personally. I mean, respecting the thew of an individual tribe, but in greater tribal ritual, part of the practice of consumption of anything is part of the unity of the ritual. And to have one person that's whacked out of their mind on acid is, not really part of that. To have, one or two people in the group that are, getting stoned out of their gourds right before walking into ritual, that doesn't really, put them into that mind state with the rest of their tribe.
I think it would depend on the ritual, wouldn't it? Because if your ritual requires that altered state, then
well, I mean,
it makes perfect sense to use
listen
those.
to what I'm saying about it being, I'm talking about in the context of a wider tribal ritual. Individuals using in a wider tribal ritual. And again, I went back to, tribal thew notwithstanding, for all I know, there's tribes out there where the entire group gets together and smokes in a circle before they go to ritual. But that's their business, and it won't happen in mine. As far as individual personal ritual, again, that's not my business. I think it should, be subjected to the heathen smell test, as it were. Does your ritual involving those drugs make sense in a heathen context? And I think the subject is always going to come up of a guided or shepherded ritual, with somebody who is, the religious figure, if you will, of your tribe, guiding you through this, spiritual exploration while you're out of your mind on whatever. That I honestly have little comment on. I've never encountered it, at least not in a heathen context.
I think it's something that we're probably not in a place where heathenry is mature enough to have those rituals develop yet. But I could see them becoming a thing down the road.
It wouldn't. Sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
I'm going to also say this, and I realize that you two are probably going to disagree with me a fair bit, but I think it also comes down to the legality of what you're doing as well. Because, I'm going to be completely honest here, heathen group busted for smoking pot in City Park doesn't help any of us. And that is, I realize that my own personal background working in broadcasting, I do have a mind towards PR. And while I don't necessarily think that I have this great tie and responsibility to the entire heathen community, at the same time, what I do, if it gets put in the news, is going to affect every other heathen in some small way. So, if you want to have a ritual and use, if you want to smoke pot as part of whatever you're doing, and that's your tribe's thing, and you live in Colorado or Cascadia, more power to you. If you live in Arkansas and you want to put meth in your rituals, I'm going to have a problem with you. And I think that that's something, and that's something that I personally think that we have to think about how what we do, even when it comes to drugs or whatever else, is going to influence our own personal reputations, as well as, not getting caught.
Well, I don't hear anything to disagree with really there. I mean, it comes down to reputation. If you're doing something that's illegal, getting caught will ruin your reputation in our society. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. So, moving along.
Yeah, stay in school and don't do drugs. Unless you live in void in Cascadia in Colorado where pot is legal.
Washington, D.C., where it's decriminalized.
Stay in school and don't do illegal drugs.
Yes.
There you go. All right, so question, and I think this one came up briefly on a survey some of us filled out. Do heathens have any special food considerations?
I want to know this because I've never run into anyone who have, other than our joke about we can't have a ritual unless it involves pork. I've never actually, that is something completely baffling to me that this would even be a thing.
The answer is no. Eat what you want. I mean, as long as you can without killing yourself. If you have an allergy to peaches, please don't eat peaches. That's just silly. Don't kill yourself for food.
Yeah, I mean, if there are any sort of dietary restrictions for religious reasons, it's not going to be for heathen reasons, it's going to be for tribal reasons, and I can't even imagine this situation that would arise to cause a tribe to create dietary restrictions. Well, I take that back. I have run into tribes that you cannot actually be a member of the tribe if you won't drink the meat. Regardless of your personal situation, I have seen somebody who straight up left a ritual because they were unable to respect the fact that he was a recovering alcoholic. So I guess that's the closest I can imagine is certain tribes coming up with ridiculous dietary restrictions, but
I don't know, maybe nothing I could imagine would be on that. Well, it comes more down to we're not gonna trade with somebody than we're not gonna eat something. We can have crawfish, you just can't have crawfish from that place.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Cascadian heathens, I think, are under the restriction that they have to acknowledge Cascadian beer as the best beer, but beyond that,
it's true.
I mean, we'll be honest. We pretty much any kind of gathering we have, there's got to be at least one pork dish. That's more tradition than restriction.
I think that's just because pork is delicious.
Well, pork is delicious, and
okay, I do want to take a step back here.
Yeah.
When we look at, and this is something, actually went to Christian University.
Wait. But Josh, we were talking about pork.
And
yeah,
I had like a legitimate, I had a heathen thing. I was going somewhere actually heatheny with that.
Josh,
I'm
let
sure
her go there.
I actually really was. And that is because
I will mute all of you.
all I was going to say is several people in our group have had at one point in time an affinity for Frey. So it was also in a way to honor Frey. That was all I was going to say. It was heatheny.
When we look at the dietary restrictions that people see religiously, whether it's pork for Muslims and Jews, shellfish, cow for Hindus, a lot of these dietary restrictions, when you look at it anthropologically, come back to health risk. Pork doesn't keep in a desert. It's too hot in the Middle East, so it makes sense to not let your people eat pork. Same thing with shellfish. Heathens come from relatively cold climates. In the winter, you just toss it out in the snow and it keeps until you're ready to eat it.
Yep.
So we have refrigerators. Go eat what you want.
We had natural refrigerators historically.
Exactly. Okay, so
You should all
Torin.
eat crop walks, though. That should be a requirement. If anybody wants to know how to make it, I'll teach you.
I've never had it.
I'll make you some.
Torin.
Yes.
Apparently, according to J. Red C, Adel Steinson wrote the function of the 10th century Gothi. What would you say the function of the 21st century Gothi is, if any?
See, now that's a really weird question because my tribal Thu doesn't require a Gothi. It's honestly difficult for me because I mean, Gothi is, in my mind, an Icelandic concept, and I'm not an Icelandic heathen. The type of heathenry that we practice, and that I tend to say, I won't say that this is, dominant in Cascadia, but I've seen it be very common here, is that the function that you would see in an Icelandic culture of Gothi is sort of divided amongst a few individuals, and the rest of it rests primarily on the chieftain. It's sort of a leader-priest concept. So that question's not really for me. It's like I don't have the basis to answer it for you.
Well, so my understanding of Gothi, and I could be entirely wrong, and I'm sure our producer will post a correction for me in the chat room if I am, has always been that a Gothi was the landholder and the primary authority in that particular area of Iceland. And I imagine you could find corollaries in Anglo-Saxon England, Norway, Sweden, all of those places. But the job was both religious and secular, and I don't think we really have the secular role of the Gothi in modern heathenry.
I disagree.
You don't think so? I mean, I don't care if you own your home. I don't care if you own 1,000 acres. That doesn't disqualify you from being a leader.
I have a one-word answer about what it is.
I'm sorry, Okay, so getting back to my disagreement with Josh, it's entirely possible I misheard what you were saying, but you were saying you don't believe that there really is a secular Gothi role in modern.
Not that secular Gothi role, being that secular lawbringer and the place where the local community gathers in times of emergency and things like that.
Okay, well then I'm going to go back to I disagree with you. To me, I guess tribal leader, at least as far as my brand of heathenry goes, is responsible for the laws of his tribe, and those laws sometimes exceed the secular is the wrong word here. I guess the laws of the land, not supersede, but exceed. Just to be clear there, I'm not suggesting that any tribal leader can impress upon his tribe to break local laws, because he shouldn't, and if he tries, he shouldn't be chieftain. But, my tribe has rules. We have our own laws within the tribe. I don't think we've ever called them laws before, but they have that strength. And those laws are enforceable. And they are not necessarily laws that have to do with religion so much as they are laws that have to do with the tribe in a social, secular way. So I think there certainly is a secular role for the, Gothi, for lack of a better word.
See, I think when it comes down to it, in modern era, really the biggest role for the Gothi is paperwork. In states where you have to have some sort of recognized religious leader sign religious paperwork, that's pretty much all I got. Because otherwise, and I say that as someone who really, has a dear friend who has worked on a Gothi training program and is a Gothi. I don't necessarily know that to me, it's, basically a matter of paperwork for most places. And it sucks that it has to be that way, but we do work on kind of that culture.
So, to answer Jared's question, then we don't know.
Or rather, we disagree. Because I think we all know our knowledge just doesn't agree with each other.
That's fair.
It is tribal dependent. There's the answer.
So yeah, that kind of goes right back to what I said earlier about tribal thew.
Yeah.
Like I said, my tribe operates on a warlord priest concept, the chieftain role, as opposed to Gothian chieftain or whatever, or even just Gothi. I know tribes with just Gothi as being the top spot.
So, how important is it to have kids in the heathen view?
Well, I can say, as someone who's choosing not to have children, it really comes down to what is best for your tribe, your family. I've got a lot of crap for the choice not to have children, but I have, and I've been pretty, I have health issues that really, kind of make it so that having a child would not be in the best interest of future generations. I'd like to end some of these genetic health issues right now, this generation. I don't necessarily think it's something you have to do. I don't think that anyone should feel pressured to have children that doesn't want them. And anybody who disagrees with me on, and people should have children when they don't want them, can, I don't know, go piss up a rope. I have very strong feelings.
Well, I am going to say, for one, you're asking this question of three childless people, so go ahead and take that bit of context how you will. That said, I don't think it's necessarily important for each individual heathen to have children as much as it is important for heathens to care for children. And I don't mean that necessarily if you choose not to have children that you should, adopt or anything like that. I mean, you should take an active role in the lives of the children of your tribe and community.
Absolutely.
Even if you're, even if it's, if my neighbors, I refer to them many times, the guy I brew beer with, they're not going to have children, period. But if they were, those kids wouldn't be heathen kids, but they would be the children of my brother, and I would take an active role in raising them, even if it wasn't, raising them as heathens, and that's important. And if you're in a tribe that has children, it's even more important. Not necessarily to raise them heathen religiously, but to raise them with our values and to teach them how to be people. And that's what it comes down to, teach them how to be humans. That is very important.
Well, in my tribal group, there are children, and they look at me as an uncle because I'm part of the family. Every day before work, I get off the bus at one stop, and one of them happens to live near there, and she comes up and gives me a hug, and we talk about her day, and then she goes to school. I'm an active part in their life. I don't have kids. That requires woman. I don't have one of those either. So.
Yes, that's right, folks. Josh is single. We are screening applicants, so just let Torrin and I know, or Mark. And
I didn't realize we were screening applicants. Learn something new every day.
Oh, we've been turning them back, man. We don't think you're good enough for them. Oh, I mean they're good enough for you.
Well, if you ask any of my exes, I'm sure I'm not good enough for them.
If you ask most of our exes, the answer would be the same.
That Josh isn't good enough for him?
Right.
My exes don't know Josh. I'm confused.
My exes think I'm great, but then again, most of my exes ended amicably, so that just is really weird.
Yeah, but you're strange.
I am a strange guy.
Torrin, this one is for you.
I think I know the one you're going for, but go ahead and ask it.
Should heathens try and claim religious exemption if they are pressured by their job to shave?
Okay, so that's
Did we lose Lauren?
We did lose Lauren.
Well, all right, you go for it.
I'm sure she'll pop back in eventually. So the answer is no, qualified. I say no because just the fact of being a heathen doesn't mean that you should be able to claim a religious exemption with if your job is pressuring you to shave. You need to have a legitimate religious reason for that before you claim an exemption, because that's just really shitty to try to leverage your religion like that if you don't. And, I've been down that road before myself. And, everybody sees how long my beard is. I have cut it close before for jobs, and I don't try to argue the religious exemption unless I'm asked to shave down to the skin. But the fact of the matter is, I do have a legitimate reason, because I once made a very stupid oath with some very stupid things involved in it that have to do with my hair, my beard, and my piercings. So I cannot cut my hair, I cannot completely shave my face, and I cannot remove my piercings until the oath is satisfied. It was a stupid thing to do. Kids, don't run out and make an oath like that just so that, when your boss tries to get you to shave, you can try to claim a religious exemption. But
sometimes your boss won't care.
Well, sometimes your boss has to care. However, I also really challenge you to prove that religious exemption is legitimate. Because as far as, trying to get a religious exemption pushed through in just about any organization, there needs to be some larger recognized organization that can back you up. And as I mentioned a minute ago, there is no heathen religious reason to grow long hair and a beard. There is no dictate. Like, we're not Sikhs who have the hair, the beard, the turban, and the ritual knife. We don't have that. So go ahead and try to get your tribal leader to say, yeah, he took an oath. Who's your tribal leader? Is he a recognized religious official, and can he back the bullshit up? That's going to be a problem. So, yeah, answer is no, unless you have done something stupid like I have. And even I would have a hard time backing it up if I ever had an employer truly challenge me on it, which so far none have. And at that point, I would have to make the decision between violating my oath or losing my job.
I would say that the argument could be made from a historical point of view that free men wore their hair longer and wore facial hair.
I would disagree with that entirely.
Well, I'm not saying I agree with the argument. I'm saying that it has been made.
Oh, it's been made. It just doesn't. It's just been wrong.
So I do have one more question for you, Torin.
Okay.
Hiding any piercings?
Hiding? No. I have 4 piercings, and they're all visible on screen right now, in theory.
That answers your question.
Who asked that question?
Well, there was a very specific piercing they were asking about.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't see the question, but I'm pretty sure I know where they were going with that. No, I have, let's see here, 2 in my left ear, 1 in my right ear, and 1 in my tongue. And the only one that I could take out if work required me without violating my oath is the tongue. That one I keep for sentimental reasons.
So don't make silly oaths.
Don't make silly oaths.
Which is a valuable lesson to learn in general.
And
it really is.
If you make an oath, then make sure it's someone that can be covered by shirt sleeves.
That's probably a good one.
All right. So one of the things I've been doing recently is I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, which has led me to listen to a number of heathen podcasts. I'm not going to say what number, but a number. And there's been a common thread among them that internet heathenry is poisonous. That we're all too cantankerous for our own good. And then among others, they take it to full-on, what was the term they coined for Occupy with the hashtags and activism and
Hashtivism or slacktivism. I call it slacktivism because really there's no real effort in doing it.
So, what do you guys think? Is internet heathenry poisonous, or is it just a fill in the gap for now until people start congregating into more localized communities.
I'm going to say this as someone who, I feel like I'm going to sound like the old heathen lady saying this, but if you guys think how people act now on the internet in regards to heathenry and being cantankerous is bad now, you are not around for the era of email lists and Also True Lore being an actual super active forum. And I mean,
miss those.
people now are downright nice comparatively because you just really, people are I would argue, even say people are too permissive of stuff, and people are less likely to call you on your shit now than they were then. And I just think that I kind of find it funny when people bring that up, because I think it's kind of, as far as how people are behaving, it's not terrible. Yeah, people are going to say stuff about you. That's life. But yes, I do get, from like a newbie point of view, people might get upset. But at the same time, I don't know, I'm very like conflicted on it sometimes. But I will say that I think that the whole virtual kindreds, virtual bloats, virtual any kind of like actual trying to actually have like heathen rights virtually is wrong, incredibly wrong, stupid, dumb, and otherwise not working, and doing it oh so wrong and not heathen.
Well, tell us how you really feel.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say that, first of all, it's not a stopgap thing. It's something that's not going anywhere for a very, very long time. And in fact, I think it'll exist as long as the internet exists in this fashion. In fact, I think what you're going to see less of, however, are some of these growing pains of it, of people actually trying to use it as a substitute for real heathen community. Just because, and I don't say this just because it's the type of thing we push, but I see it all over the place, is that with the exception of a few startling examples of, online bloats and virtual kindreds and garbage like that, for the most part, people are pushing towards an idea of using it as a resource, not as an end goal. I think that's the trend that's going to continue. In fact, I have a hard time thinking about it and using the term online heathenry, because it's not. It's not online heathenry. It's just an online expression of real-world heathenry, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Go ahead.
I think it's very difficult. And granted, I get the isolation that some people have, and I get that sometimes the online interaction is all you have, and I get that completely. I live in Arkansas. There's not many heathens. But at the same time, we've got to recognize that heathenry has to take place face-to-face. The ritual and the metaphysical part and all of that happens can't happen on an internet connection. And the relationships, while I've made great friends online, it's just something that can't be done virtually. But I would think internet's been great for bringing people together into local communities. I think that's been really something phenomenal about the internet that they didn't have prior.
Well, and that's the way the internet should be used. I'm at my current group on the internet. I was looking for a local group, and how did I look? I Googled, and I found them, and we met up in real life, and now I'm a member. So that's, what you should be using the internet for. Okay, took my glasses off. Somebody else lead the conversation.
Well, and I think that that's definitely, one of the downsides I say to this has been we do have lacked as heathenry some really decent resources, like really good kind of centralized networking, because we are so cantankerous. So I can see that as being, it can be hard to find people even with the current internet. So, it's ups and downs really, and I get kind of annoyed with people who, people want to find somebody somebody come to me and say, oh man, I need to find somebody in Iowa. I don't live in Iowa. I know a few people in Iowa. But I'm like, well, here is the Troth Steward for Iowa and the AFA's Folk Builder for Iowa. Email them. They usually know who's what and who's who around there. And then people are like, oh no, Troth, oh no, AFA. And I'm like, oh no, boots on the ground. But I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to say we're going to see that being one of the primary uses of the internet when it comes to heathenry as time goes on, as we become, larger and better connected, as you see more tribes on the ground. It's going to become more of that marketplace of ideas concept where these different groups and individuals can communicate with each other from distances, and you're also going to see it as ways for people to find local groups, because that can be really difficult. I mean, like you were saying, you can point them towards these few sorts of organizers to try to help them find somebody, but in a lot of areas what you're going to run into is there's one type of heathen in your area, and you may be one of those people that's unfortunate that they're definitely not a type of heathen that you want to be involved with. I think we're fortunate in my area, just because there's so damn many of us up here that you can, find any type of group you want within a 50-mile radius, most likely. But at least down on the wet side, anyway, probably a little harder on the dry side. But that being said,
well, sorry, my brain shut off.
That's okay. You try to restart your brain. I'm going to go restart my beer.
I think that this might be a good segue into talking about one of the things we had discussed earlier about talking about tonight was starting, maybe not necessarily starting your own kindred tribe, whatever, but just starting a meetup, starting something so that people can start meeting each other locally and forming these whatever. These whatever they want to do. Start meeting people with similar interests and values and whatnot.
Well, and meeting people is always an important thing. If you're going to seek community, which I know a lot of us do, then you have to get out and meet people. You can't just rely on Facebook to set you up with someone who's ready to adopt you into their group.
Well, yeah.
And let's be honest, if they want to adopt you based solely on what they've seen on Facebook, do you really want to be in a group that's that non-selective?
Well, I can tell you that my tribe has met quite a few people, and, I can tell you that there's a couple of them that I ultimately see joining our tribe, but we haven't brought anybody in yet. We just meet them and have beers with them at this point. Because, yeah, you got to be selective. You got to know who you're letting in.
And you wouldn't just marry anybody.
Well, I was saying, those of you that are looking, you've got to know what you're joining up with, too.
You should be just as selective in choosing a tribe as the tribes are in letting people in.
Absolutely.
To me, it's better to have no group than to have a crappy group. Or as we've said a lot kind of in conversations, it's better to have a small group than a large and crappy group.
Oh, by the way, Josh, just for you, I'm now drinking an Anglo-Saxon beer because I'm foolish for a good barley wine.
I do love good barley wine.
I've switched over to Angry Orchard's Apple Ginger. It is super gingery.
That is a good barley wine. Sorry.
So, when we're talking about, I mean, we've really been taking a lot of questions, but what would you say are things that heathens can do to kind of police our own when it comes to out in public or out in the internet where we're visible? What can someone like one of our esteemed Reddit users do to make sure that people aren't out there giving them a bad name by false association?
That's a tough question because it's not like you can actually stop anybody from what they're doing short of calling the cops on them if they're doing something illegal. But I don't know, that is a really kind of a tough question to answer.
Okay, I was really hoping that Lauren's answer would give me context because I kind of missed what you asked there.
The idea is how to deal with people out there, kind of a false association, people giving you a bad name because of their own actions, because there's kind of a false association because you're both heathen.
You mean that somebody who has experience with all these racist pieces of crap as being heathens, and then all of a sudden you say you're a heathen, now you're a racist piece of crap. Well, I mean, it just depends on how important it is to you to change that person's opinion. If it's a person whose opinion you actually give a crap about, or whose opinion can affect you in some way, then you have to try to educate them. But explain to them that heathenry is a very large and multifaceted group of people. Sometimes some of those facets are terrible, just like with any religion, and that you're not part of that particular facet of the religion. But in the long run, if it's not somebody who can damage you either personally or who you think is going to damage the reputation of your tribe or of your practice, I mean, I wouldn't worry about it.
I had this situation happen to me, so I feel like I can kind of speak on it a little bit. Back many years ago, I was working somewhere, and a woman I worked with who was African American saw my Mjolnir and freaked out a little bit and went to HR. And I had to explain, and her only exposure to heathenry was prison troop, as it's called by some of us. So, trying to explain, fortunately, I happened to have, some decent stuff to back me up, and everything turned out fine. But the fact of the matter is, there's going to be that reaction, especially when you have these, like something I complained about here, that article that Vice put out in the spring about how basically boiled down to European heathens good, American heathens racist pieces of shit. And stuff like that makes me angry because, like it or not, when something like that goes into media, that may affect me. If somebody Googles my name, finds the podcast, and then Googles heathenry when if I'm looking for a job, because people do that, they Google you. It's just kind of how it is. What's going to happen next with that? That can affect us, and it pisses me off.
Well, in a situation of real life effect, they would have to prove something beyond just, they're a heathen, and I say heathens are bad.
Well, she was trying to say I was wearing a racist emblem.
Right, in which case she wouldn't be able to, she legitimately wouldn't be able to make the case, so it doesn't really fucking matter. In that case, personally, if it were me, I know it was a real situation for you as opposed to a hypothetical for me, but I'd probably go out of my way to convince her otherwise because I have to work with her.
Exactly, and that's pretty much, and I'm like, you've worked with me for a while, you know me. I was very confused at why but she had that very visceral reaction because her only exposure to, her her only exposure was through prison stuff because she had done some stories on prison stuff. She was a reporter.
Yeah. Well, I can totally understand that. I mean, I've been one of the first people to get, a little bit upset with the fact that the filth lot is no longer really usable for us because of its negative associations with the Nazis. And despite the fact that I'm very well educated on the use of that symbol across various cultures, despite the fact that I'm very well educated on how that symbol is one of ours, if I see somebody wearing it, even amongst other heathen tattoos or symbols, I'm still going to make assumptions about them.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not necessarily going to jump on those assumptions, but I'm certainly going to be prepared to go into that situation and learn that person is a raging fucking racist.
Yeah, and that is, again, let's be completely honest, we are judged by those appearance things in life, whether we like it or not, and whether it is wearing something like that. I mean, that's immediately where my mind's going to go. If I see somebody wearing that, that's immediately where my mind's going to go. It's not going to go to, it's a heathen symbol. If I saw that at a heathen something, event, whatever.
Yeah.
I have seen that at heathen events on Sunwheels, and we left.
Well,
it was just, I can't deal with this.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to tell you and all of our listeners straight. If I see a swastika or certain depictions of the Sunwheel at Cascadia Moot, I'm not going to immediately jump up and kick you out, but you're going to, I'm sure Josh would agree with me on that one.
I do, in fact. I do think that, there could potentially be a call to reclaim such symbols, but I don't know how you'd pull it off, and I'm not the one to do it.
Honestly, I don't think it's worth it at this point. I mean, I'm just going to say that straight out front. At this point in history, it's just not worth it.
I'm going to go ahead and say...
In 100 years, but...
I'm going to go ahead and say that is a topic for a different show.
Yes.
Because my beliefs on that are complex.
Well, when you start getting into the nitty-gritty of any of these subjects, they get complex.
Yeah, and this is not the episode for that.
No, so let's see. Let me have any more. If we have any more questions that we actually want to, that I think we might want to answer.
I think our audience has given up on us.
Well, I don't think we really want to answer who was it whose tribe member got arrested for putting an arrow through a cat.
I believe that was already handled.
Let's see.
I think mostly they're currently arguing about who are the worst drivers and something about goats.
Idahoans.
Obviously.
So I actually here's something to talk about that I had mentioned earlier in the show. Since our audience has given up on us, and I'm not giving up on us yet. So let's talk about going to heathen festivals. And I'm not just using this as a way for us to promote Cascadia Moot more.
Except for the part where we are.
Yeah. So going to a heathen festival, like if you're a new heathen or even haven't been to one, I'm going to be honest here, it can be a little nerve-wracking because you don't know what to expect. So we're just going to, I don't know, I guess talk about our experiences, talk about things to do, don't do, etc.
Well,
that's my
then
thought.
I'm going to be right up front and say I have never been to a heathen festival. The closest thing I've been is my group put on a Christmas thing a couple of years back, and there was maybe 20 people who showed up. So
congratulations, that's festival size in the heathen world.
Oh, well, I guess I've been to one.
I've been to smaller. I've been to Trothmoot, which is one of the bigger ones. And then I've been to several things up in east Arkansas. And the big thing is just be a decent guest, clean up after yourself, don't be a jerk, don't get, shit-faced at Sumble. I've seen that happen way too many times. Way too many times.
I think that's just good manners anywhere. I mean, if you're gonna stumble with somebody, don't get shit-faced.
I feel like that needs to be reiterated way so much because I've just seen it too many times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think when it comes to going to heathen festivals, I mean, what you have to remember is that unless you're the organizer, you're a guest, and you need to behave like a guest. And that means that you have responsibilities as a guest, just as the guest or just the host has responsibilities to you. You know, there are going to be things like you said. You know, don't get shit-faced at Sumble, even though to a certain extent it is the host's responsibility to recognize when people are starting to get shit-faced if a Sumble keeps going, and to end the Sumble so that people can get shit-faced.
But there are some people who drink and are perfectly fine, and all of a sudden drunk. There's no in between, so it does happen.
This is true. I'll admit that. And, you know, people do need to know their own limits. But beyond that, I mean, you have to try to understand the culture of the situation you're going into. You know, if you're going to Trothmoot, for example, it's probably a good idea not to start telling everybody that you run into about the gospel of metagenetics.
I will even say, to go a little different example, if you're going to Trothmoot, be sure you're up on the Loki policy, because that's kind of a big thing with Trothmoot as far as you're not allowed to hail Loki at rituals, open full rituals. It's just a thing.
Interesting.
And I don't. We'll get into that some other.
I understand. There's
yeah.
history there, so.
Yeah, it's a long. Anyway,
I didn't
but the idea is you want to. Yeah, I mean, you want to get on board, and I'm going to say this just as somebody who's worked on kind of both ends of festivals. Volunteer to do something. Ask if you can help out in the kitchen or something. You know, be a good guest, because people remember that. People remember the people who helped versus the people who just sat around and did nothing. And once again, that builds your reputation. And if you are a member of a tribe or a kindred, it brings builds their reputation too.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you know, we've got Cascadia Mood up coming at the beginning of next year. Well, spring of next year, and we're definitely going to, you know, need some help here and there from people who come in, whether it be for, you know, random things that we haven't planned for, moving things around, setting things up, helping out in the kitchen might be a thing. That's going to be totally up to the guy running our kitchen as to whether or not he needs any help. But
but there's still always, you know, even if they don't necessarily need help, there's always clearing tables. You know, there's always something that can be done.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm planning on brewing a shit ton of beer for it, and I'm going to have to get somebody to help me move it around.
Somebody's going to have to come get me from the airport. They don't let me rent cars. Thanks, Obama.
I know. I mean,
well, so
I remember a brighter age when blind people could drive cars.
Brighter's an odd word, but, you know.
I will also say, go, if at all possible, don't go by yourself, especially if you don't know the people. And that pretty much goes up for any kind of heathen meeting up you're doing with any kind of strangers. I feel like I need to give the stranger danger talk, because this does happen, and there can be bad things happen. It's happened to me. Whether you're going to a festival or you're meeting up with new people or whatever, don't go by yourself. You know, if you do go by yourself, let people know where you're going and check in with people. If you're going to meet up some heathens somewhere locally, don't meet up at your house. Meet up at a bar or a park or something. If you don't, you know, just use some common sense, because for some reason, and it's not just heathens, I've seen pagans do it, I've seen lots of people do it, they just, when they find somebody that shares something with them, whether it's D&D or heathenry, they feel like they just lose their damn minds and their common sense. And, you know, there's lots of heathens I don't want to know where I live. And there's lots of heathens I wouldn't invite to my house. So just be cautious on that. And use common sense, and if you get to somewhere and they are doing things which you do not like, you are under no obligation to stay.
Absolutely. And another thing too, when going to heathen gatherings, is realized, I'm going to keep drumming on about the dichotomy, the relationship between host and guest, is to realize that your hosts do have a function. If there is a problem, if you run into a problem, bring it to the host. Don't try to solve it yourself. You know what I mean? I've heard of problems with certain groups trying to go into large gatherings and run roughshod over people, and that's the kind of thing you bring to your hosts so that they can deal with it.
And I think that is very important. And hosts also have to remember this as well. And that is I think that is super important to be able to say, and to be able to say, hey, listen, these people are causing problems. These people are breaking the growth of the event. The hosts, if they are good hosts, also should actually do something about another kind of thing that's like, is this good or, a good or bad event?
Right.
Yes.
And when it comes to organizing things, I do want to kind of throw a couple of things out here, because I did actually do like 3 minutes of research. But it seems like the best way right now that people are having the most success is Facebook, Meetup, meetup.com. We actually do, our toast last week was to a group that started on Meetup. And I'm going to say it again, the Troth and the AFA's outreach programs, you don't have to agree with their politics to recognize that they are people who are there local, who know people who, it's kind of their job to know what's going on, even if it doesn't necessarily involve the groups they're active with. So I highly, highly recommend all of those, and Yahoo groups sometimes, because we still have an active Yahoo group in Arkansas. We are behind the times, though.
I was going to say, are Yahoo groups still a thing?
Yeah, right now pretty much we screen people and then push them to Facebook. But because
I don't know why anyone would still use Yahoo. If you're still using Yahoo, you should probably just sell your computer.
Old people.
Hey,
Like
you
I
know
said.
what? There's some nostalgia in that. I still have a Yahoo email address, and it's almost as old as you are, Josh.
Yeah.
And it's
I
still
don't-
running, and it's largely spam-free.
I think you're wrong.
You think I'm wrong about which part?
Your Yahoo email address couldn't be almost as old as I am.
I didn't say it was as old as you are, just almost.
Now I will say this. I was Googling around trying to see if anybody still had like any decent active listings. So there used to be a couple of kindreds that kept some decent listings, and I actually found where I had posted myself back in 2003 on a site with my Yahoo Mail address, and I'm like, wow, if somebody's contacting that person to try to get around with people in Arkansas, I don't think I've checked that box in a year, maybe.
I will say this much, Josh. My Yahoo email address can't drink yet, but it's old enough to take a bullet for its country.
Oh God, so is mine.
I too have an email address old enough for that. Mine's not Yahoo. Mine's Lycos.
Like
Oh,
I
wow.
was a hipster as a child.
Well, I had a Hotmail account back in the day, but and theoretically I still own it. I just don't know how to get into it.
Okay.
Everybody had Hotmail at one point.
I know.
Rocket Mail. I had Rocket Mail.
I had
Rocket
AOL.
Mail, which, yeah, we never had AOL because, well, I lived in the boonies, and
And this week on Heathen Talk, remember,
we are really, yeah. So, let's see, what are they talking about? It's like, I don't
they're
know.
talking about email because that's what we did.
We're trendsetters.
So let's talk a little bit more about Cascadia Moot. We have the time to devote to it. So let's do a little more promoting.
Okay, well, promotion is desperately needed because people are just not. I keep hearing people talking about going to Cascadia mode, but people are holding off on actually doing that ever so important pre-registration stuff. This can't happen without the pre-registration dollars. You people need to realize that.
It's true. If you're planning on just showing up at the gate with money, there's not going to be anyone there.
Well, and I'm also going to point out, if you're waiting until, much, much closer to the event to do your pre-registration, that's going to make things incredibly difficult on us. And I understand the difficulty with pre-planning, way out ahead like this, but on the flip side of it, the event only gets better if you guys pre-register early.
Yes.
Like I said, we've got our site nailed down, which is great. It's a beautiful site. But, depending on the attendance we get, that's going to affect, what are we serving for food? Because it can't be mentioned enough, all meals are included in this. We're going to be providing a certain amount of beer. And the more pre-registrations we get, the more money we have for beer and booze.
Well,
Exactly.
And the better food there will be. And, we've said it before, we'll say it again. We're not making money off of this. Every
Not a
penny you
dime.
send us is getting spent.
It's going to be awesome, guys. I mean, it's going to be fun. It's going to be beautiful weather. It's going to be a whole lot of really good heathening. It is heathening done right. And I'm super excited.
Or
I've
at least less
pre-registered.
wrong than other people are doing it.
Fair enough. I'm pre-registered, and I'm really hoping you guys go out there, pre-register, please, so we can get this thing going, because it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, Torin, let's talk about for a minute here accommodations. For those of us who are not good at roughing it.
Right.
Is there any,
So yeah, we are the hall that we're supposed to be renting on the site. Now, let me go ahead and talk about the site in general for a second as I get into that. It's in a place called Granite Falls, Washington, which honestly, when people try to imagine what the wet side of Washington looks like, this place is like the concentrated essence of it. It's deep down in an old forest, yet easily accessible. Honestly, I live right on the I-5 corridor. I can get there in 45 minutes, no problem. That's with traffic. So you get here, and you are far away from roads. Once you get down onto the site, you don't even really know that you're in civilization anymore, because our forests are really good at doing that for people. It's right on the edge of a glacial-fed river that is always flowing and always beautiful. The entire thing is just surrounded by trees. So if you love trees, this is a place for you. It's a Masonic campground, so it's also got plenty of lodges on it, and we are renting one of those lodges both for the kitchen facilities and for some bunk facilities and feasting facilities.
As a side note, we will also be hosting an Illuminati event that weekend, so consider it a better bang for your buck.
yeah,
Your jokes are not useful.
twofer.
Your jokes are not useful, Josh. There will be no Illuminati event. There will be no Illuminati event because there are no Illuminati and we are not members of it. That important thing said. So, like I said, we are going to be renting one of the halls for this, so there will be both kitchen space, feast hall space, place for us all to sit down and take meal together, and there will be some lodging space. Now, priority is going to go to people who have various disabilities and really can't rough it, but there's also going to be the ability for people to set up tent and camp if that's what they choose to do. Fires are welcome on the site, so we will both have our communal fires that we're setting up ourselves for Cascadia Moot, and anybody with a fire pit is going to be able to light their own fire as well. There are fire pits on site for doing that, but I've also, like I said, been for various events going here for about 15 years, and people often bring their own elevated fire pits as well. There are shower facilities in sight, hot water, flushable toilets, so it's not going to be that kind of roughing it. And those showers have pretty much endless hot water. I have spent way too long in them before when the weekend was getting to me. So there's all of that. And on top of that, on our own parts, like I said, we're providing all the meals. The current plan involves at least one meal that is spit roasted wild boar. People who do pre-register and have dietary issues, go ahead and tell us about them. We'll do our best to accommodate, and in places we can't accommodate, we're going to let you know well ahead of time. If people want to bring, if you have an RV or a camper like that, there are spots for those and hookups. There's a little bit of an extra charge for hooking up an RV. I think it's $10 if I recall off the top of my head. That is paid directly to the site owners, so that doesn't have to be included in your $50 pre-reg, and that'll be something you pay when you get there. Am I missing any details here, Josh?
How accessible is it? Because I know we've had that question before. How accessible is it for people who might have some mobility issues?
It's pretty accessible. I mean, the whole thing is, once you get down into the grounds itself, everything is gravel, but it's really well-maintained, graded gravel paths and roads. I've seen people there that were disabled or injured that have to get around in, wheelchairs or powered chairs or on crutches or whatnot, have absolutely no problem getting around.
Excellent.
Beyond that,
it's going to be great.
I can't, just show up and make it better with being there.
I'm going to do a workshop on one of everyone's favorite Norse fiber crafts called luciding. It's a lot of fun. I've taught it many times, and I'll teach you 2 or 3 different stitches and teach you how to make yourself all kinds of wonderful belts and cords that you can use for holding up your pants or curtains or whatever.
There was one thing we did forget to mention.
What's that?
Little ones are free. If your kid is, what did we decide, Torin?
I don't remember. What did we decide?
Well, I'm sure Toby will shoot me for this later, but if you've got kids, call it 11 and under, they're free. You don't have to pay registration for them. I can't imagine they're going to eat enough food to justify $50 for each 11-year-old. But so that makes it easier for those of you who do have families. You don't have to pay registration for your infant.
Yeah, well, that would be kind of horrible for us to... Now, we would like to know that they're coming. So, if you pre-register and you're going to be bringing, some kids that are on the free list, definitely let us know they're coming so that we can appropriately prepare, because, like I said, we are providing the food.
It's true. We want to make sure they have all the chicken fingers they can eat. I've got nothing, guys. My brain is shut down from this cold.
Yeah, it's pretty... I want to remind everybody that Winter Moot is coming up. I will be there. I'm pretty excited about this, not going to lie. I talked about it a little bit last week, but it's Midwest Winter Moot. It's going to be taking place, Bifrost Way Kindred's putting it on. It's going to be at the Osage Hills State Park in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. It's going to be the 6th through the 8th of November, and registration is open. It's $60 individually. If you get a group of 2 or more adults, you can do $50, or family registration is $80, and it's going to be awesome. Scotty Snook, who we had on the show last week, is going to be the guest and talking about her new book, American Heathen. It's just going to be a lot of fun, and they put on really good events there, and so I'm pretty excited to be going out there and getting that opportunity to go and do some, as my husband calls it, go do some heathening.
Yes.
So that's exciting.
So,
let's see. Yeah. Next week we're gonna have a better show.
We are. I want to apologize again for this week. It was just a perfect storm of everybody being busy with work, the guest canceling, myself being sick. It's been a fun one. But if you want to tell us how badly this episode sucked, please go ahead and do so on our Facebook, which is facebook.com/heathentalk. our Twitter, which is at heathen_talk. Or if you're feeling particularly grumpy, you can email us at heathen.talk.podcast@gmail.com, and we will make sure that Mark writes you a very pretty letter in response. Anyone else have anything to say?
No, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I mean, like I said, it's been a bit of a off-the-cuff episode with the guest canceling, and I think we did our best, and our audience definitely helped us with that.
And we appreciate you.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Also, T-shirts. We're still selling T-shirts, ladies' T-shirts, coffee mugs, and we now have fun-sized T-shirts for your kids. The first T-shirt arrived today with someone, so one of our listeners let us know. Mine is on track to be here tomorrow, so hopefully we'll all be wearing our Heathen Talk shirts next week so you can see them, order them. Everybody wants a Heathen Talk shirt for Christmas or Yule or birthdays, whatever.
Whoever that was that got theirs first, you should go ahead and take a picture of yourself with it and post it on the Facebook. Let everybody know that you were awesome before anybody else was.
You were the first person to do it right.
On that note,
yeah,
y'all are doing it wrong.
And you're not the boss of me.
Y'all have a good week.